A Look Under the Shell is an Everlook Broadcasting Company production. And welcome to another Look Under the Shell. My name is Dan, and we have once again our end of year, I'm going to say, understanding, our look at not only the CC2 patch that happened very late October, early November, but also we're going to be talking about Karazhan 40 today. As per usual, I'm joined by our wonderful community manager, Akalix.
Hello, hello.
And also we have Vrograg, the orc who also does the news.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a good day.
And today our guest for this Look Under the Shell is none other than Jamie. Jamie, go ahead, introduce yourself, and feel free to explain a little bit about what you do for Turtle. It's complicated, and it's a lot, so I'd rather hear it directly from you than try to explain it myself.
Hey, thank you, Dan. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here. My name is Jamie. I am mostly in the position of lead server development at TurtleWow. This, over the years, has moved on to be somewhat of a management position, where I now also coordinate more departments of the team to try and map out and visualize what the next steps for Turtle should and can be over a longer period of time. And overall, it's been going great, and I expect to see more and more great years for Turtle coming up.
Now, how did, because you've been around a while, right?
Correct. I've been around, I will say, I think a month after Turtle's launch, basically at Turtle's launch.
So pretty much the entire history.
That's correct.
So how did the slow, I'm going to assume it was a slow transition. How did the slow transition from, okay, I'm making code, I'm designing things, to, okay, I need to organize people to design things? How did that occur for you?
Right. So at the start, when you're starting such a project with the people that you start with, which was mostly Torta and a few others, you don't really have people to even manage work to, so you can't really offload the work. It's mostly, okay, I want to do this, I want to make something fun and great for the players, I have this idea with a few other people, and we want to flesh this out and make something out of it. Except there's no one to do that work except, of course, you. So you start off by doing that work yourself, and more you realize as teams get bigger or the servers get bigger, the network, that you need more and more people. And as more and more people came in, I realized that not only development is something I enjoy doing, but also keeping every department, because at some point we need to split up to departments with these amount of team members, trying to manage their tasks, trying to manage the members in these departments is something I enjoy doing as well. And it kind of, like you said so yourself, it kind of went on trickling down to where we are right now, years later.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. That had to be a unique experience, having to suddenly realize, okay, I have to engage management gears versus just, okay, I get to sit and work on something.
Oh, for sure. I think especially moving from, I don't want to say away from development to managing, because I still do both, but moving to the management position, you kind of get a few new responsibilities and a few new things you learn about yourself, mostly in the sense of communication and the social aspect of it all, because being such an international project with people all around the globe also means people with completely different personalities that you try to have to steer in some in the same way, basically, to try and get things off the ground and try to get new content out, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as challenging as that may be, that's also where the fun lies, because after you do successfully manage to do that, it's a great payout in the sense of accomplishment. And I think that's the best part of it all.
Sure, and good mention on the international side of things. Obviously, we have our European servers at Turtle. We have our Asian, our South Asian servers. We have all of those. As of this releasing, we have just announced some brand new servers. I will not try to botch the coverage on that. Akalix, tell us about the South American servers.
So we're going to be launching a South American network. We wanted to give Latin America a better experience for playing on Turtle, and that means that there's going to be support in a couple languages. Currently, we're looking at Spanish, English, and Portuguese. Both the game itself and the support in-game will be in all three of those languages. We're only going to be starting out with one realm, obviously, but we're curious to see sort of where this can go and where this little experiment in Latin America can take us, because it's really it's an interesting opportunity that we really haven't seen a lot of other networks go in the direction of a Latin American realm, but it's a community that's really passionate, and I'd really love to see more support for them. So I'm excited about it.
Very nice. Now, obviously, we had to do a lot to line up support for the Asian servers, because I'm only going to speak for myself. I don't speak any language outside of English, and even that is a struggle sometimes. So was it difficult to line up support for not just Spanish but Portuguese?
I don't actually know too much on how difficult that was, because it's been entirely handled by the Latin American project lead. The team is being obviously managed by us still on the Turtle team, similar to how the Chinese team, the Southeast Asian team, is being managed by us. It's a separate branch, sort of, is the best way to think of it, but still overall part of Turtle WoW. So individually, me or support leads or whoever don't have a ton of hands-on involvement with it, because it's very self-contained, which also means that, for example, if server has 2 people online each day and ends up dying, that's not going to mean, oh, Turtle EU is also going to die. No, it is a self-contained ecosystem, really.
Gotcha. And before we move on, do we want to shout out anyone from the SA team?
I'll shout out to the lead in charge of it, Nito. He's been going through a lot of work to get it going, and been overall really, really helpful and very communicative. He's been really enjoyable to work with.
Perhaps a future look under the shell guest. I would love to actually sit down and talk with them. Now, though, let's go ahead and get into the bread and butter of what we're going to be talking about here. For everyone who is listening, here's how the structure of this episode is going to work. It's going to be 2 segments. That's normal. That you come to expect that. In our first segment here, we're going to be talking about the CC2 patch, or the most recent character update that happened in late October, early November. And then in our second segment, we're going to talk about mostly Kara 40, but with a few other subjects that we're going to go ahead and mix in. Let's go ahead, though, and get right onto that initial patch that happened, that big patch that we had, 117.2. And the first part of that is actually not the CC2 part at all, but the Turtle WoW launcher. The launcher was a major change for the community. I love it. There's still some things that are missing for it, but overall, the fact alone that I can update all my mods through that has been a godsend. And auto loot is my favorite thing ever. Jamie, what led up to the Turtle WoW launcher, and why was it so important?
Yeah, so for the Turtle WoW launcher, it has been an idea within the team to get this type of launcher that we've developed out for a longer time than we just released. There had been some roadblocks to prevent it from doing so, but in the end, I mean, here we are with the launcher released. So our previous updating methods, which we still rely on for some players who can't use the launcher just yet, were logging into the game and getting your WoW client to patch itself via the very nostalgic in-game patcher updater. This works well overall for bigger patches, but it quickly falls down, deteriorates. I'm sorry. Trying to push smaller updates to the client, to the players. Now the issue is that a lot of data that the game uses is stored on the client. Therefore, we need these patches to be able to edit a few things here and there. One of them, which is a big thing, we'll get to that later, I'm sure, are spells. And seeing as how CC2 was coming up, and we knew with the changes that we were doing in CC2, they would almost certainly require edits, maybe some extensive edits after the fact. We couldn't say, like we did in CC1, we're releasing this and we will gradually see what we do with balance or changing of spells. It had to be done in a more consistent manner and faster manner to keep up with all of the changes and to make sure that we're right on top of what is good, what is bad, etc., etc. And the launcher is an answer to all of this.
So for everyone who is wondering, like, why? Okay, why do we need a launcher in the first place? There's a very specific reason. It's to make sure these patches can get out easily and effectively on time, right?
Correct. That's definitely one of, if not the main reason. There's a few other reasons, like you said so yourself. Add-on management becomes way easier. You can. This is not fully implemented. We're working on it, but you can have mods enabled. This was enabled in the beta version of the launcher, but we've had to take it out because of very greedy antiviruses who do not like to meddle with their files too much. But all of these things are reasons to use a launcher. It is ease of usability, especially for newer players who just want to download something, let the program do its things, updates, or download the full game client, and run. And especially with the growing player base over our networks, it is something that we needed to properly distribute these smaller patches. Correct.
And it probably has done a world of good for the different regions that play on Turtle, yeah?
Also correct. Because of our expanding networks, like I just said, the population, the player count, and everything, there are significant increases in bandwidth usage and all of the problems that come with a lot of players needing to download all of these updates. And the launcher can help with this as well, because we can more easily distribute the load of multiple players wanting to play or wanting to download our updates all at the same time, because they're usually from all over the world. And so it's easier for us to assign different data centers where we can push these updates to than to all do it via our game servers, which is what is basically happening if you use the in-game updater.
Which is a lot. Like the that in-game server is probably getting hammered constantly no matter what. So that makes a lot of sense. Vrograg, really quick, any questions or anything you want to talk about with the launcher?
I think the launcher is a great and necessary move by the team. I'm really excited because there's been a lot of people that have been able to join and try out Turtle Wow without needing a computer engineering degree to figure out how to get the client working. The client still stinks, but it is what it is. That being said, though, what I am curious about, while things go forward with the client, I know you said right now with mods, pinging antivirus makes it something that isn't ideal. But I'm curious, are there any other functionalities, any other ideas, either from the community or from the team, of things that might be added in the future with the launcher?
That's something I can't really comment on right now. It is, we of course have a department who does our tooling. The launcher is one of them. And there are plans to have the launcher do other things than it does right now, plus the in-game mod support. For example, I would consider vanilla fixes also a mod, but it's one of these things that is basically for high-end newer hardware required if you want proper frame rates. So it's kind of a necessity. And then there's a few other things that are mostly additional, like auto logging in, um, and a few other tweaks here and there. For now, however, features beyond that are not something that we've looked at. This might change in the future. As I said, I can't really say too much about that right now.
So you're letting Haxor have a break. And by the way, he did a great job.
That's correct. And he did.
We don't compliment Haxor here. What are you doing? Come on.
Nah, he's great.
Anything else from you, Vrograg?
No, I think it's great. Don't know if this is something, because this is a little bit outside of the purview of what you were asking me, but I am curious because we did talk a little bit about the South America server. We did talk about it having English, Spanish, and Portuguese support. I'm just curious if there was any maneuvers there to have a different localization.
I believe the goal is to have the client side localized for each language there, Spanish, English, and Portuguese. So I imagine there'd be no reason you wouldn't be able to use that on the EU network as well. Just with
Yeah,
the
I
audience
understand that translating from English to Romance languages is a lot more simple than perhaps English to Chinese, so that makes sense. But I didn't know if that was official or anything.
I don't know like for certain that I can say, oh, day one there will be the option in the launcher to change your client's language from this to that or that to this, but I know that obviously uh, it should be doable, and it's something that we could definitely look to try to do, as well as that's going to be something in 2.0 regardless. In 2.0, it's going to have language toggles built in, so.
Yeah, that's great. There's a lot of Spanish speaking and Portuguese speaking people that are even on the EU server right now, and I know that they are. They haven't heard the announcement yet, but I know they will be excited when they do hear it.
Alrighty. Akalix, anything you want to mention about the launcher before we get to the CC2 stuff?
I just want to mention the fact that my favorite part about the launcher is the fact that you can also turn on and off your like optional mods in it, stuff like your custom patches for various graphical changes, because that is a godsend for being able to test if things are broken in a mod versus if things are broken like in your client, or if oh it's a server issue, or if oh no it's because I downloaded a mod from 3 years ago, and shockingly that doesn't work with everything currently. That's one of my favorite features about it, and I love it.
Yeah, the way that it can automatically update add-ons is really great. I love that because the maintainer of Bigwigs for the server, I think that's Peepo. He probably has an update every week, and you always get the notification that yours is out of date. And you don't want to be the guy with an out of date Bigwigs.
Oh no, don't be that guy. Never, ever be that guy.
No.
Alrighty, let's go ahead and talk about CC2 and 117.2. So, for those that don't know or haven't been around, 117.2 dropped very late October, early November, and well, the reason I say that too is because I don't remember the exact date that it dropped.
November
because
1st.
November. Okay, so it really is right there.
Yep.
And it changed a lot. Huge amount of class changes, more than anything else, were introduced in 117.2. And obviously, everyone has their own opinion about it, whether for good or ill. You know, my class got this or my class didn't get this. That's not what we're going to focus on here. We're going to focus on the overall for that. So, Jamie, my first question to you about the CC2 part of that patch is, what was your reaction to it, your team's reaction to it, and how did you view a lot of that information coming in as that patch was hitting?
Sorry, you're asking the reaction of me and the team towards what exactly?
To not just the performance of the patch, but to people's, like, players' reaction to the patch.
Right, got it. So 17.2 brought class changes too, which was a huge step up when it comes to things we did, things we altered, things we added or removed, versus class changes 1. And so I knew even before we would release this, that I knew it would definitely cause good reactions, bad reactions. Mostly, I think I saw a lot of shock as well, which is something that I anticipated, because it's not every day that we do these amounts of changes, like the majority of them. My main reason to even have class changes 2 compared to class changes 1, where we were way more conservative, is that for us to take a look at what we want vanilla classes and vanilla design to be, or vanilla plus, classic plus, we'd have to look at, okay, where do we stand right now? What do we think were classes or builds that were either unpopular, underperforming, or not living up to that class fantasy or class flavor? 3 of those things were actually the main topics and the main requirements of us to change things around. There's a few exceptions where we'll probably get to later, but overall, many of the changes that we did were based on those 3 statements, checks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Trying to think where I want to go.
I'm just surprised Jamie can remember anything from after the patch drop, considering the many fires that he was probably in charge of putting out.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's...
there have been a lot. And you try, I think, if you live and breathe Turtle, for better or worse, I think at some point it kind of sticks with you. Maybe it's a core memory of trauma. No, I'm just kidding. But overall, a lot of bad, a lot of good. I don't want to say bad. I think, like I said before, I think it's rather shock. I don't want to say bad reaction, rather people reacting out of shock and fear for what this will bring. Because of course we brought the changelog to the forums before the patch would hit, so people could prepare a little at least.
Mm-hmm.
Which is good because people can prepare, and it's a double-edged sword because people can read what's going to happen, but they can't experience it. Meaning that all they can do is sit there and self-theorize or mentally prepare for something that might not even happen. For example, my class will be so weak, or this or that won't be fun, and therefore you see a lot of shocked reactions from the community. Not shocking.
Gotcha. Okay, no, that makes sense. Now, obviously, when 1.17.2 hit, there were a lot of people coming back. The servers went up and down just a little bit. There was some emergency patching, but overall, stability returned pretty quickly after that patch. When it came to the process of balancing, because we've had 4 balance patches, four weekly patches since then, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, of course. But how did you and your team approach trying to figure out what needed to be rebalanced after CC2 hit?
That's a very good question. I don't think there's any one correct answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think, for me personally, I sit a lot with the team that originally did class changes too, even after we've dropped it. We sit around and we talk about the impact of the changes that we've made. We read the forums, we read the Discord, we read the Reddit, we read everywhere, and we try to gather all that information, discuss it, and then come to a conclusion or a decision based on all of our knowledge and the experiences of people around us. It's the experiencing plus the data-driven analysis of looking at over or underperforming builds or classes that I try to mix to get a result that I'm happy with. Either this build does not play out like I wanted it to be, wanted to play out. This build is too weak. This build is too strong. This whole class is too weak or strong. You have this image in your mind of the design that you just changed on how it should play out, or at least how we would think it would be fun for this build to play out. And sometimes you're right, and sometimes it does not work that way. And you have to then reflect upon, all right, why is that the case? And retroactively then look how to fix the issues that make the build not play out the way you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
overall, I think it's a very tedious and difficult process.
Oh, sure.
I think it's a very continual process. That's why I just mentioned that the players can definitely expect more balance changes and patches in the future, because we will continuously be looking at this. There will still be class change meetings in the team internally every few days to go over all of the new feedback we've received and process it. A few ending words on that is that some people, I've seen some shocked comments basically of players being like, why did you not nerf this class yet? Or why did you not buff my build yet? We've been really weak, or this has not been fun ever since class changes 2 came out, which is 5-6 weeks by now, the moment this airs. And to that, I want to say, we're not ignoring you. We're reading everything, and we try to process as much as we can. But I want to hedge ourselves against knee-jerk reactions of rocking the boat, where emotion is filled with reaction is filled with emotion. I'm sorry, of players not performing the way they used to, and so it's less on statistics and more on emotions. And the moment you start incorporating those decisions in your next balance changes, oh, we have to do this, oh, we have to do that, then you very quickly run out of team, because you're constantly rocking the boat back and forth. You correct and then you undercorrect. I'm sorry, you overcorrect one way and then you overcorrect the other way. And that's not really how, in my view at least, you push for a better future where everyone can enjoy their builds and classes.
Sure. Okay. Now, while I don't want to get into specifics in any way, feel free to either say, I probably shouldn't answer this question, or keep it very, very generic. You mentioned that sometimes, with this patch in particular, things either work out exactly as you expected, or maybe they don't work out at all as you expected. Either players approach the class very differently, or they use a mechanic that you didn't think would be used, or use it in a weird way. Can you give us one example of, hey, this worked out, this class change or this update worked out exactly as you expected, and one example of, wow, we didn't see players taking this direction at all?
Right, sure. With the risk of being a little controversial, I'll answer that. There is a class or a build that worked out the way we wanted it to work out, I think, is Arcane Mage,
Mm-hmm.
the Arcane Tree rework, where it was very much before in vanilla in 1.12.1 or even CC1, a supplementary tree where you would always take bits and pieces of it, but then your main spec would be Fire or Frost. I thought it deserved more than that. That's why we redesigned the tree to be its own identity, which focuses around resource management of your mana and the instability of Arcane, and therefore that kind of comes forward in the randomness of Arcane. And I think we did a really good job overall. I'm quite happy, and I see players picking it up and enjoying the design. So I don't really have many bad things to say about the Arcane changes. So that's one.
Arcane is so much fun.
Right.
One question on Arcane, because of a reference I made in the script for the Mage update video for 117.2, I have to ask, was the talented ability Resonance Cascade a reference to Half-Life?
Very good question. I'll have to ask the original designer in the CC2 team. I don't have an answer to that. I would like to think so, but I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, definitely. To me, it was, but I wasn't the original designer. So I have to give credit where credit is due, and I don't know if it was.
That's fair. That's probably one of the most frequent comments on that video on the Turtle Wow YouTube, and I
see.
I need to know. But okay, no problem. So the second part of that question, then, the thing that you didn't see, that you didn't see coming with a character change.
Right. So there's a few here and there, but I think the one I'd like to touch upon is Fury Warrior. It's still in talks as we speak. Therefore, I will not speak in absolutes for now. But in general, we tried to diversify the two DPS builds of Warrior, Arms and Fury. More so to give them their unique flavor, where Fury is more the Berserker type of gameplay, and Arms the more precision type of weapon mastery gameplay. I think overall we did quite okay with Arms to fit that design. For Fury, I think we did so as well, except from player feedback, we can clearly see that for some things they worked out different than we had hoped. For example, we made Enrage, the DPS boost on a Fury Warrior, we made that proactive instead of reactive. It was reactive, but it was also proactive. We added Enrage to be able to be procced if you had a Bloodthirst crit.
Mm-hmm.
Because Bloodthirst would hit yourself, and therefore you could proc Enrage. But this led, from the player's point of view, this led into the nasty side effect where Fury Warriors would feel that RNG was overshadowing the way they would play their class, to the point where it wouldn't matter if they it wouldn't matter if they performed at their best in terms of skill and how their rotation works, how their movement works, everything to get the best and the most damage out of their class. If RNG was not on their side, they would do less damage because Enrage would not proc, and that felt bad for them. That's something that we've had to review and really talk about as a team to then do something with. I won't say what yet. There are balance changes coming. Warrior is in them as well. But I will just say this is one of these design things that wasn't really on my radar the moment we released it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Before I pass things over to Vrograg here for any questions he may have on CC2, because I want to give Vrograg and Akalix fair time on this, I will remind everyone that continue speaking reasonably and talking about your concerns, what you like and what you don't like about CC2 and 117.2. To echo what Jamie said earlier, the team is listening, they are documenting, and they want to make sure that they make the good changes for the long term, not just knee-jerk ones. So keep speaking, keep talking about things, keep going on Reddit, keep going on the forums. The more documentation, the more video, the more actual, for lack of a better term, evidence. I don't like using that term in this situation, but visual aids always help. Keep providing that stuff. Keep talking about this stuff. With that being said, though, Vrograg, what questions do you have, and what topic do you want to talk about for CC2?
Well, if we're keeping it broad, which I think was probably more constructive, there's plenty of things and plenty of places where I've seen pain points for the community and places where I've seen overall embracing. But I think one thing that overall really encapsulates the entire class change system, what's gone in, is that I would almost say that before class change to 1.17.2, before that, I think if there's sort of a delineation between vanilla and vanilla plus, I certainly think Turtle WoW has crossed the Rubicon into vanilla plus territory. And I have seen some people in the community saying stuff like, hey, this isn't really the vanilla that I grew up with or I'm used to. And some people saying, that's kind of a turnoff. And I'm wondering specifically, now that a good amount of things have changed with classes, there's a good amount of new content with what's within the game itself now. Where does the team see sort of where is the next place that you can say like, hey, this is where we think is too far and sort of goes beyond the bounds of vanilla plus? Or do you even think there is really a specific boundary? I'm kind of curious about the philosophy of that.
Right. Another good question, which I don't think has a one correct answer. So as we can see with other, maybe even Blizzard themselves, the players there, and on Turtle, everyone's perception of Vanilla Plus or Classic Plus is different, of course. And therefore, for some people, when we did class changes too, when we're still doing them, we're changing them as we speak, some players were turned off, or they said, this is not for me, this is too much, this is not what I wanted, I just wanted the new content, the new items, quests, zones, dungeons, raids, you name it. And that's completely fine. No one, you don't have to like something just because we change it. We did change it because we thought class changes 1 were too conservative. Why do we think so? It's because in our eyes, in my eyes, some of the design of the classes and builds that Vanilla had was not complete. they were not complete, and they were either not fleshed out enough, or they just didn't do what you would like the flavor or the class fantasy to do. I just spoke about that as well. There is, I think you're all too aware, but there's one example I'll just mention, which is Enhancement Shaman, where we gave them a few extras in Class Changes 1, but we knew back then already this wasn't going to be enough. We gave them more now to actually make them stand out as a proper build, and we're still editing the build as we speak, of course. Now, on the other question that you have, what point is vanilla plus, and what point is it not anymore? As I said, I think that's very personal. For me, it's vanilla, a classic, has a very strong social aspect to it. Classes, if we're looking at class changes anyway, classes would excel in a few things and they were weak in other things. No class could do everything. You have druids, I suppose. They were the tricks of all trades, but they were the jacks of all trades, I'm sorry. But they did it in a little less good way than other classes would do their niches, right? And I think this really stands out in vanilla more so than any other expansion that comes after. Because every class and every build has their niches, you need each other to progress. Either in PvP, you need to help each other to kill the opponent, the enemies, or in PvE, when you're doing a dungeon or you're raiding. You have the holy trinity of RPGs, tanking, healing, DPSs, of course. But even outside of that, you have things where one healer can do this while the other healer is good at that. For example, AoEs, or healing over time, or different types of dispelling. You name it. Every class has their own niche. And I think this really helps with feeling that you're a part of the world, but you are not the main person, because it leads me to number 2 of what I think vanilla is and what it definitely isn't. And what it isn't is that you are the hero of the story. You're the hero of Azeroth in this case. You're just someone who is trying to fight their way, or herbalism their way, whatever you want to do in Azeroth, throughout the world, just making a name for yourself. And you're not the hero or the heroine of the world. So you need others to help you in your quests, in your raids, in your dungeons, in your PvP. And I think that's the strength of vanilla. And as long as we strive to keep that in the game, the social aspect, I would still consider us very much a vanilla plus / classic plus experience.
Yeah, that's a very well thought out response. Thank you for that. And maybe now I'll take down at least a few of my forum posts about rogue tanking.
Please do. Please do.
If I can hop in for a second, the reason I originally fell in love with Turtle WoW, it was when I was really burnt out on WoW, and I'm on the younger side, so WoW is in some of my earliest memories. I've been playing WoW for almost my entire life, and I love this game. And I remember it was a handful of years ago, back in 2021. I was pretty burnt out on the game. It was in like Shadowlands when it was just kind of terrible on retail, and it was after my guild collapsed on Blizzard's Classic. I remember I logged on to I tried Turtle. I decided, you know what, sure, I'll try a private server, whatever. And I got on it, and I remember I just had this experience of, at first I was kind of underwhelmed because, like, okay, whatever. But I remember walking into Goldshire, and I saw those 2 new custom little houses, and I saw people role playing. And I sort of had this moment of, oh my god. It's like it's like the game I fell in love with as a kid. It was like I was rediscovering this long lost love where I had been so burnt out on WoW, and it was finally this version of WoW where, like, I'm able to experience the discovery of the world again, and where there are actually people in the world who, like, I'll meet a person and that's a person. Like, I remember this is back when we were under 2,000 population. A lot of people knew each other by name, and a lot of the time you would know everyone by name if you started becoming like a active member of the server. I remember this is back when hardcore was just a guild, and you would know everyone who was like past level 10 in the still alive guild, because you would see them throughout the world. You'd help each other with a quest. You'd feel sad when you saw someone who's like level 30 and you're like, oh no, I did a quest with them 6 levels ago and they're dead. No, it was this magical feeling of rediscovering the world being so big and you being so small. And I think that's one of the really big core principles of keeping it vanilla plus, not retail minus, is the design has kept us very grounded in this. You are not the hero super champion demon slayer of Azeroth. You're Bob McJoe, who's bad at his tanking rotation, but you know what? We got to do dead mines, and you're a warrior, so I guess we're doing it. It's a sort of the game will beat on you if you're terrible, but there are still ways to play the game, even if you don't want to try to be amazing at it and do top tier DPS and pump on everything. There are different avenues to play the game. There are different things that are fun, like fluff in the game that I really like.
No, there's definitely been a few Bob McJoes in that mine who got me killed.
Back to Vrograg. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about in regards to CC2, how it was released, or the reaction to its release?
Well, I kind of wanted to mirror some of the stuff that Jamie said. I mean, as far as being more on the community side, what I saw and what I experienced, I think there is a lot of wisdom in noting that there is a good time to, when you see something that's different, there is an amount of time that you need to take to adjust to things and to wait to see how it all shakes out. And I think that's definitely true for what happened with class changes. But I don't really have a question as much as I did actually want to, make it clear that I really do appreciate that the team took the time. Boy, this is about a year ago now, that the team took the time to reach out to the community, have a class council, and have some very long dialogues about the pain points for classes. I think that helped. Uh, it did have its difficulties, but I think that's a great place because, just to kind of spring off what Akalix said, a lot of what the game is the community itself. And so allowing the community to have a voice at the table really did feel like we had impact in the game beyond just playing it. And I think those initiatives are good, and I would love to see them continue in the future.
A wonderful point. Akalix, anything that you want to mention quick on CC2 as well before we move on? Akalix?
I was muted. Sorry. I think that I just want to sort of it's a bit of a brief recap, but I just want to remind everyone that even if you are not immediately seeing us react to something, that doesn't mean that we're just ignoring it. We're not going to, unless it's like a massive glaring issue of you just can't use that button, like it doesn't press. We're not going to instantly knee-jerk patch, change things the day after or the week after things release. It takes time for people to learn, adapt, figure out how different better rotations work and all that. And it also takes time for us to get good data on that. So it's something where even if it feels like, okay, it's been 2-3 weeks, why is my class still bad? It's because we're not trying to instantly react to go, oh no, and then buff it and then have to a week later nerf it again because, oh, actually, that was overpowered, but we thought that it was weak because on the first week people weren't able to do this and that. So, okay, now we're buffing it, or now we're nerfing it. Okay, now we're buffing it. That's the sort of problem with making a sort of snap change like that. So just because we're not making snap changes, don't be confused and think that that means that we don't care or we're not looking, we're not paying attention to it. We are. It's just a matter of we have to give it adequate amounts of time to, let the changes sink in, for lack of a better way to put it.
That makes sense. Now, one thing that has been brought up quite a bit about this patch, and that Vrograg in particular expressed an interest in talking about, is the QA for the patch and how Turtle has changed and evolved their QA. I'm just going to introduce this topic by asking, how is QA handled for CC2, if you can share any details, Jamie, and what lessons on QA did the team learn from CC2?
Recruit more QA.
Not Jamie.
Good one from Akalix. He's not wrong.
Fair.
Which is one, but two. In regards to just QA for CC2, there's two steps that we needed to take, which is also something we do for Carousel 40, but we'll get to that in a minute. One is, the things we're designing, do they actually work? Do they work the way we want them to work? And do we have something on our hands here? Do we have a build that plays or that does the rotation in the way that we planned it out to be? And as I said before, a lot of these were all the changes that we've done were all tested in that way by QA, and they all pass those basic requirements. And then we find out that the players play them differently or don't really embrace that playstyle, and then we still have to swap them in a few scenarios, in a few cases. But overall, that would be step one of QA. And step two would be, where do they place in terms of balance? Because, look, we're very aware, Turtle WoW, making a character, you invest a lot of time in that character. You have to level them up. You have to do, usually you do dungeons or questing, then you do your raiding or your PvPing to get gear. You just have to do a lot of things, professions, before you get to the, let's say, the end game. And therefore, we understand that once you've put all of that time in, you are kind of discouraged, or you're kind of disappointed, I should say, if after the class changes drop and you do the things that you are used to doing, different rotations in the old days, for example, and they don't work anymore, or they don't work as good as they did before, you feel like, oh, that's great. I just spent all of this time invested into my character, and they completely ruined it. I think that's where a lot of the emotions come from as well. Which is where I will bring in step two of QA, which is trying to find the spot of balance where we say, no, I think this class or this build is performing as we want them to be. And there's 1,000,001 ways to test this type of performance, this type of balance. We've had a few methods, but overall, I immediately want to say that the best testing methods or QA methods when it comes to gameplay performance will never pick up everything all at once. This is why the launcher has been such a good addition, because we can immediately react. For example, you just said we've had a few balance changes. We have indeed, and we've only been live for 5 to 6 weeks. Now more are coming as we get more and more data and more people are figuring out their new rotations, so we can change things around, change numbers around. because it's not really the issue about your class underperforming is not a big time investment for us to improve. And so I'd like everyone who's listening and thinking, oh, there goes the time invested in my character, time for me to either stop playing until they fix it or level my alt who's a different class. I want you all to be aware and know that we're right on top of it, and it might take a little longer than you'd like, but that doesn't mean that we leave the classes or builds that are underperforming right now in the dust.
Sure. Vrograg, I feel like you have a few things to ask on this. I might steal one here, and I'm just going to ask, Jamie, what are the possibilities of some kind of PTR for future patches? Do we have the player base to support something like that? Would that be a feasible tool, or would that open the floodgates to a little too much information?
There's a lot of talks about this in the community and in the team. I will give you my personal opinion. That doesn't mean that things will go that way. It's just what I think. We haven't had a public PTR, and I'm glad we haven't. I think the pros outweigh the cons. The pros being, one of the main reason is you embrace the spirit of what we're trying to do, which is Mysteries of Azeroth, of course. It's the reason we keep the database locked for a few weeks or months, even at some time, after a big patch release. It's everyone is basically starting from scratch, from zero. You all need to get used to things. You all need to get used to your new rotation when it's about CC2, but it might also be about, let's say, Kara 40 releases. Then people need to adjust to how they fight these bosses
Okay,
or the raids in general.
I'm going to press you just a little bit on that and say, what are the cons that you're thinking of?
Right. The cons are, of course, there's less content, there's less amount of content that's being tested. And that's the biggest con, really. And therefore, some things might slip through the cracks, and they go to live, and we find out later than we ideally want. That's mostly the biggest con I can think of. And when you put those together, when you put them side by side, it's very much a perspective game. If you think one is better or the other is better. Therefore, this was my personal opinion. I do not want to say we will get a public PTR, we will get a PTR, or we won't. I just want to say there's a reason there hasn't been one yet. It's because it really is a point of contention.
That's understandable. Again, I have my own opinions. What I want to do is make sure people understand your perspective on it. And you did say, for the record, I know you did say that's not the Turtle WoW response to yes or no PTR. That's your personal opinion on it.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So Vrograg, I'll go and hand things to you on that. What do you want to ask about when it comes to QA?
Well, thank you. There's a lot I could ask, and fortunately, because I have some small level of access, I do get to see some of the developer chats and some of the internal workings, and I understand the perspective Jamie has about the PTR or having a public test realm. Um, Thinking about what could have, should have, would have happened. I'm not gonna do that. But now, going forward, we have a launcher. We can do much more incremental updates to the client, and uh, potentially something like a class change patch could be released separate of any content changes. And maybe in that kind of a world, there could be more testing, even done by public or even vetted people from the community. That would be my most hope for it. But what I did want to comment on as far as QA goes, part of the difficulty I see from people in the community is that I'm picking this. There's plenty of other smaller, sometimes even bigger examples, but when I think what a lot of the frustration is, they'll have something. I'm thinking of Enhancement Shaman had or still have a talent called Calming Winds, which was intended to reduce the amount of threat for an Enhancement Shaman, which notoriously and historically has been rather dangerous for their life. However, their on release, Calming Winds, or it might have been later. I don't remember when it flipped, but essentially, Calming Winds at some point actually gave them additional threat. And what I'm trying to talk about is, like, I can't imagine how difficult it is to do testing and get feedback based on classes and how certain specs are working when some of the actual mechanics, like core mechanics of their classes, are they show up and they're not working as intended. And I guess what I'm curious about, because I listen to how the step 1 and the step 2 of the QA is that there were, I think it's fair to say, there were at least a handful of things that came out on release and just weren't working. And what kind of a problem does that cause for the team? Because now you can't have any reliable data to do adjustments on, and there's a lot of faith lost in the community. We're like, well, they had X amount of time to do this and it doesn't work. I understand how difficult it is to actually develop a lot of these things, but what I'm curious about is, in light of more glaring errors like that, is there any sort of adjustments, or like what has to be done to sort of get a good baseline for a lot of the testing and data that you guys use to do future adjustments? Or do you have to start from square one once everything's working the way it's supposed to?
Right. So it's has a lot of it's actually a lot of questions bundled into one, but I'll try
Yeah,
to
that's what I do.
answer. That's okay. I'll try to answer them. For the shaman thing, I think, by the way, on release, don't quote me on it, but I think it worked on release and then it didn't work.
Yeah, I
A few
know.
days
That was
afterwards.
the funny thing about it.
So this is one of them that I want to go in a little deeper, where they might work. We've tested them, and we release everything. Something is broken that we didn't anticipate. We fix it, and shamans are now broken. Now, why? I have no clue. But my point is, sometimes you do a thing, a fix, and it works. You QA it, and it works. And why would you retest all of Shaman's abilities if you fix the campfire in Elwyn Forest, example? You don't. And then you go back and Shamans are broken because the campfire had this interaction. Like, this is it's very far-fetched, but you get my point. And this is kind of what happened with a few of these changes, where one fix broke something else. That's one. And two, the PTR was actually not completely one-to-one with what we rolled out on live. That's clearly our problem, but it is something that isn't inherent to how we tested things. Because on our test realms, the private ones, as far as I know, everything that we worked on worked when it comes to not having bugs. Now, under or overperforming is another question, but the bug thing, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I knew, they worked, and then on release they didn't. So yeah, at that point you're like, yeah, you scratch your head, now what? You try to fix them immediately and roll out a patch. That's kind of what you have to do. Now, how to prevent this from happening in the future, or what to do, what to learn from this? I think check, double, and triple check. That's one thing. Two, make sure that you document everything properly that needs to be tested. So everything that goes out the door is properly tested. Does this work? And three is reopen up the question, the concern of, can we have players maybe help with the testing? The whole thing that we just discussed with the PTR. Now, you just said, correct me if I'm wrong, but that these PTR, the QA of the PTR would then be done by the players for just CC2 changes instead of content patches. And while this is good, there's two potential issues that I see with this, and I want to go over them quickly because I know I'm taking all of this time here. One of them is players might not properly fit to the standard or the template that we want them to change these, to test these changes in. For example, we use a very standardized way to test things, so we get a very baseline number for everything. And two, and I'm sad to say it happens, but it does a lot on live as well, players overall like to keep a few bugs here and there, exploits private, if it benefits them. And
Yes,
if
yes.
it nerfs their class, they're the first to put it on the bug tracker.
Yeah,
So
that is always an issue, and I do my best to report anything I see like that, unless they're really funny. Then I like to keep them to myself. But I know exactly what you mean. With players are generally interested in their own success.
right, exactly, and that's a pro versus con assessment.
Yeah, I think it is worth noting too. I mean, I know it's beating a dead horse, but the client is old, the client is bad, and the client has many weird spaghetti magic things that happen. And if you don't believe me, you can just look at the bug tracker. There's plenty of stuff there. A lot of them are repeats, but I think overall, given how large the scope of the patch was, I think when you take the complete summation of it, I think there are actually some high notes and some things that the team should definitely be proud of, like the version of Discipline Priest that's available now is a turtle only thing. The version of Arcane Mage and how crazy it is definitely a Turtle WoW only thing. So I think there's definitely some spots where the team can definitely take pride in, like, it's a nice thing to see the team not just and I'm not trying to put down anyone, but it's not just a simple copy paste of something that Blizzard did before. Like, this is like honest, authentic development, and it's good to see. And I know it's going to be rough, especially when the team moves from more of a hobby passion project to like more of being like a real development group.
I will
Right.
absolutely back up the Disc Priest thought. Disc is a lot of fun right now.
I'm very glad to hear that. And to short reply to you, Vrograg, it's for a lot of players, and it's the same for the team throughout the years. It's a you live, you learn experience, and we try to improve and learn from the missteps or mistakes. And of course, in every project with such a big scope as CC2, for example, you're going to have missteps. I think it's all about knowing where the pain points are and trying to address them for any future content.
Vrograg, you may have another question or two about QA, but we need to move on here.
That's fine. I can always DM Jamie.
Fair enough. Akalix, anything you'd like to add about the direction that QA is going and your thoughts?
Well, I will say that we have been recruiting in some new folks for QA. Generally trying to get the most experienced players as we can for it. The main thing with QA is it's something where a lot of people are very interested in it until you have to do QA. Because the sad part is, the fun, exciting part of QA is I get to test out this new shiny thing and make sure there are no bugs on it, right? And that's exciting, until then you also have to go do the other part of QA, which is I have to go run into 13 walls for an hour straight and see which one of the 15 movement abilities in the game just manages to go straight through it and skip a mechanic. Or, okay, I need to figure out why this on the bug tracker is being reported as not working when it should be working, and we haven't changed anything in the updates since then. But now it works, and it didn't then, but it also sometimes does it. It's very much it's a thankless job because QA is pretty much required for our devs to be able to work in an efficient manner. Because there is the side of QA that works with bug tracker and all that as well, not just QA working with checking stuff before it releases. And just like shout out to Turt Reynolds, our QA lead. He's very much
He's great.
stepped up. He's very much stepped up to fill that role very well. He was I want to say it was a couple months before the patch was when he became lead, or was it closer to patch?
No, that sounds correct.
Yeah, but he has filled those shoes spectacularly, and it's been really nice to see. Some of the QA that we've brought on in that time has stuck around and done really well. Some of them haven't really gotten. It's not for everyone, so I don't blame them for choosing to step away. But some of them haven't gone super far with it, and some of them have definitely done a lot as part of the QA team, and that's been very exciting. But yeah, just generally shout outs to them for the bug tracker slaving. As someone who goes through the forums constantly and Reddit constantly, I can only imagine the bug tracker is not fun to be staring at for 21 hours a day.
I'll add to that. You mentioned that QA is a thankless job. It's also a brain melting kind of job because of how very you have to go through the motions every single time you try to test something in every way you try to test it. And it can be monotonous, to say the least. So for people who are good at it, who provide proper documentation from QA, not only is it thankless, but it is a lot. So props to them. And also Turt Reynolds is one of the most creative names on the team, in my opinion.
Also, we should definitely make sure to thank the people that do take time out of their gameplay sessions to go onto the bug tracker and report bugs that they find that are super niche or super small. Doing that really does help the gameplay experience for everyone. Just because, this one quest that no one doesn't work for you, doing that really does help.
Yeah, that stuff it's the sort of stuff that we can't test for because we can't find all of these tiny niche interactions in the world, and players can, and it's something that I appreciate immensely is when someone's willing to put in that effort of, yeah, it would be lovely if we had the time to put in all the bug reports ourselves, like if you could just ticket a GM and say, hey, this is bugged. But it's not something that we can reasonably do because there are so many different bugs in so many different places, so many different ways, this, that, and the other, that it really means a lot when players are willing to go out of their way to put in the minute or two of time to put in a bug report. It helps us a lot.
Absolutely, yes. Normally, we try to take a break between our first and second segments, but the fact of the matter is that we spent a long time in our 117.2 discussion just now. We are an hour and 10 minutes into the show. So instead of taking a break and whatnot, between Akalix and Jamie, I'm just going to rapid fire a few subjects, and we're going to breeze through the other topics pretty quickly here. So starting out with those, leaderboards and logging. This is something that you mentioned, Akalix, you wanted to say just a few quick words on, I believe.
Yeah, so recently on Turtle WoW, there have been a handful of guilds who have been popping up and starting to get serious about raiding. With Karazhan 40 looming on the horizon, a lot of guilds want to be able to say that they are the best guild, and that they are the guild who is able to defeat Upper Karazhan. Being able to take the server first is really big for a good number of guilds right now, and there's a lot of people who want to contest for that. Obviously, we have Mortality, who's been holding down a lot of the records. We have Hard Knocks, who has an absolutely dominant Nax right now. Thunderail Brewing Co. has been coming back out after seemingly not being super into the speedrunning for a little while. They've been coming back for that. Only Friends has been getting up there. Weird Vibes, Doom Turtles. There's a whole bunch of guilds that are going to be getting involved, getting interested in it. East Oceanic, it goes on and on and on. The different guilds that are starting to throw their name into the ring, starting to try to see how fast they can push it, how hard they can push it. And that's getting really exciting looking at the race for server first for Upper Kara. And that's something that we are going to be taking quite seriously from the team side of things. One thing that we're going to be doing is we are going to have a progression leaderboard on the website for guilds to sort of track how far what guilds are getting into the raids, specifically getting into the new raid. But it's something where in the future we'd also really like to expand upon our tools for the more not competitive, but the more analytical and serious side of raiders. I suppose competitive is probably the best word for it.
The slightly
where-
sweaty, if you will.
Yeah, because obviously we don't have insanity tier sweaty on the server. We don't have a 30 warrior nax each week, but we do have some people who are trying to speedrun, trying to cut the times down a lot. I'm in one of those guilds and it's really fun. So one thing that is going to be a goal for the future, and it's not something that we can commit to extremely hard yet, but one goal is going to be having better tools for both these players and other players who are more casual to help improve. So while we don't have any specific details about what we're going to be able to do by when or what it will be, we do have on our radar and on our list of goals, we do want to improve the current options for logging on the server because currently it is rough, and we want to have a more official way to do a leaderboard. Shout outs to Vita for the current leaderboard. It's awesome that someone in the community stepped up to do this. But we want to also be able to provide an official way for people to have this leaderboard set up. We don't want it to just be entirely reliant on one guy doing a Excel sheet. We want it to be where guilds are able to have their times officially stamped by the server, being put up automatically. And that's an eventual goal. It's not something where we can immediately say that yes, this is happening today, but it's one of those couple of things that we really would like to have as tools for people who are trying to either push for a record on the server, push for that number one, or for people who are just trying to, track casually how their guild's doing as their guild goes from being just, 30 people who are friends doing Molten Core to, okay, maybe we can try to get a little more serious with it and trying to improve and see how far they can push themselves.
Sure. Vrograg, it sounded like you might have a question there.
Well, I didn't have a question other than to say that Vita's the best, and I hope you don't put him out of a job.
I did want to ask, now that you were mentioning that, Akalix, have you worked with Vita? Is the team worked with Vita on how Turtle is going to be implementing leaderboards?
Not in a official regard, because how Vita's leaderboards are done is via a YouTube or Twitch VOD of it and a hurt log, which obviously the eventual goal would be not to be relying on YouTube videos or logs for the timers and progression. It would be a more official solution, but that's something that'll be coming more down the line.
Gotcha. Okay. Next question then, because you mentioned it, Kara 40. Jamie, do we have a date for Kara 40 yet?
I won't burn my hands on that question. I'm very sorry. It is very soon, TM. There's a lot of moving parts with it. I just spoke about CC2 and Kara 40 even more so, because this is kind of the next tier, basically, from 3 to 3.5. And so players, of course, really want this to be a challenge. And therefore, we as a team, especially, don't want to disappoint in that regard. And therefore, we don't only need to QA, hey, does everything work the way we want these bosses that we designed to work? We also need to QA, is this manageable? Is this doable? Is this fun? And can we clear this, or is this too easy? For example, I will give away one secret.
Uh-oh.
It's not so much a secret, but there's a way higher chance that the release of Kara 40 would be on the harder side of things than on the easier side of things. So we will most likely overcorrect for difficulty so that we will not, even after all of our own testing, get into a position where players will be like, wait, this was it? Well, we cleared it, guys. We did it. Here's your title. That was fun. I guess we'll have Kara 40 on weekly clear by now. We don't want, of course, that would happen. That is the end goal. But seeing that in a week or so after Kara 40 release would be disastrous for me. And so that's something we definitely want to look out for. It's difficulty tuning.
That's legit. And not, while I don't want to spill any serious internal discussions, I know a lot about when Kara 40 is supposed to happen. Also is revolving a little bit around, okay, is everything ready from CC2? Again, I'm not going to say anything specific, but I know that was part of the conversation, right, Jamie?
That's correct. There will be a CC2 balance patch before Kara 40 release.
Okay.
I can say that much. And this will mostly focus on the things that we've known, but we wanted to make sure that, as I said before, we didn't overcorrect or rock the boat too much preemptively with these changes. And so we will do them, and right after, I don't want to give a specific time yet, have Kara 40 out, so players can know and expect that the balance patch that is coming will be the balance patch they will play released K40 on. Kara 40.
Obviously, pending any massive oversights in it, which we don't see coming, but
Of
with
course,
that
of course.
asterisk.
Always the asterisk.
It's just sitting there staring at us ominously, like asterisks might.
Right.
Now, you mentioned people wanting to really sit and think on Kara 40 for a while. Very quickly, what are your expectations from players and their reactions to Kara 40? What do you want to see from players?
If I can chime in for that one,
Mhm.
one thing that we really want is there's a specific moment in the raid that is meant to be a real big punch of wow, that's super exciting. And unfortunately, part of it was leaked, so I just ask people, don't spoil that to other people the best you can. Let people who are in the raid have that wow moment, have that cool moment of, okay, that's awesome. Another expectation, sort of on a less experiential side and more actual gameplay side, is a lot of us have internally said on the team, at least the discussions that I have heard have been expecting it not to be cleared first week. And I would be very curious to see if a guild manages to get it down week one, because the current, you could correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, but the last that I had heard, everybody had been estimating it to be at least a week or two for people to get it down.
Oh, definitely. I think that's still on the very quick side of things. The way that previous raids were released, basically in vanilla as well, is that you would have a set difficulty of a raid, and then in that raid, there would be increasing difficulty boss by boss. Look at the wings for Nax, for example, where the wings themselves aren't like huge. There's bumps, of course, and different mechanics for each boss fight, some way harder than others. But the last are the ones that drop the highest item level loot, and also considered to be one of the hardest bosses of Nax. In the same vein, we want to do Kara 40 in that same way, where the introductory bosses, so the first bosses you'll fight, you might be able to take them down after a few deaths, maybe at once if you're a really good guild and you're all playing at your best. and then we'll scale up the difficulty throughout the raid to a point where maybe you wouldn't be able to clear the boss because you're just lacking enough members with the gear that the previous bosses dropped. That's a maybe, of course. It depends on if you're a elite lead guild, speedrunner guild who's really good, then maybe, who knows?
Do you want to comment on the 4 different resist set boss rumor that has been going around? Some people have
I
said
personally won't say a thing on that.
some people have said that there is slated to be a boss where you are going to have 4 different resist sets, and each tank will have to wear a different res set.
The amount of I don't want anyone to comment because the amount of people that have made their fortunes off of selling resist gear for Karazhan, I don't want to spoil that for anyone.
All I'm concerned about here is I really hope it's not like a original AQ40 release Cthulhu kind of impossible and more of an engineered difficulty. I mean, although that would be vanilla to release something that's impossible to do, but I'm hoping that's not the case.
I will not say a thing. That is all up to speculation. You'll just have to do the raid when it comes out.
Do the content. That's what matters. That's fair. That's totally fair. Moving forward here, because we do need to actually wrap this up pretty soon. And I'm going to direct this at Akalix first, and I'm going to wrap these into kind of one neat little ending bundle. What was your design philosophy that you took going into this year? And how has that design philosophy changed? And what are your long-term project goals? That was a lot. I know that was a lot. Akalix, feel free to break that down as you'd like.
So going into the year, obviously our main goal was really pushing hard on custom content, on that vanilla plus experience, right? Because prior to this year, our vanilla we released more vanilla plus content in the past year or so than has basically been produced for WoW up until this point. Patch 1.17 was basically big enough to be a expansion, and then 1.17.2 was as well. These are expansion-sized patches that we're releasing, and in the future we're going to try to break them down a little more, where different patches are going to have, each of them will have a chunk of content, but not be, ideally no patch will ever be as big as 1.17.2 because it took half a year and that part definitely sucked, but it also is just a lot at once, and that means that a lot more issues will probably also sneak through, stuff like that. But beyond that, our overall philosophy for the year has been trying to push out as much custom vanilla plus content as we can to really give people some interesting new stuff to play. Going into next year, obviously we have our roadmap from this year where we have a few things left to cross on there. We are obviously still looking at Grim Batol and 2.0 for 2025. And those are 2 really big marks. Grim Batol obviously being bigger than Nax, being the biggest raid for Vanilla WoW, as well as being completely custom, all of the areas custom, all of the bosses custom, all of that, really being our magnum opus sort of crown jewel for raiding in a Vanilla Plus setting. And then with 2.0 being just a monumental undertaking in of itself that has never been even attempted before, beyond just a couple animated videos on YouTube. So really our, if I had to say themes for each year, the theme for 2024 was custom content, and the theme for 2025 will be making history. Looking forward, beyond Grim Batol, beyond 2.0, it gets a little bit less clear. I've been in meetings with the narrative lead, with the design teams, all this sort of stuff. we have a lot of different stories we want to tell, a lot of areas we want to explore, things we want to try out, maybe even another class at some point. Who knows? But places like Quel'Thalas are going to get some attention. Places like Southern Silithus, all that sort of stuff are things that we want to explore in the future, but they might not necessarily be happening right now because it does take time to develop all that and to design all that. And as amazing as our team is at like world design is just absolutely amazing from our team. It's still something that takes a lot of time because it's very effort intensive. So
You have to worry about the details, and the devil is always in the details.
yes. So I would say
Jamie, your thoughts on essentially the complicated question of how do we go into 2024 and how are we going into 2025 and the future?
Right. I'd like to. A lot of the sentiments I share with Akalix, I won't repeat them, but overall, I do agree with a lot of the things he said. We personally as a team, you could really see that we've grown, and I think 2024 was a marking year to the players and the outside world, basically, to show off, hey, look, we were this small project, and through dedication and basically through dedication and just willpower, we've kept on improving, we've kept on growing, and now our team has gotten bigger and bigger. Look at what we can do now. So we were a tiny turtle, and we've basically grown along these years, and I think 2024 really showed that off with all of the content that we've produced so far when it comes to new content for zones, items, quests, to content such as the huge class changes. Whereas before we would try to incorporate new things into the game that were scrapped by original vanilla. Like, oh, this storyline, we can add something here, or maybe we can do a few quests and a little tent and write some lore about these people who need your help for a quest. We've now grown that into completely custom dungeons, custom zones, taking things from the lore that were completely left out in the world and re-implementing them. And so it hasn't grown linearly, and I think it's been a huge feat for us, because with increasing your skill comes a really a big increase in complexity, because you have to manage your team more and more so. And I'm really proud of that, and I think 2024 really showed that. Now 2025 is more of what Akalix already said, the experimental phase. Okay, now we are actually doing things that have never been done before. We already we have, I think, 18 or 1900 quests by now, custom. So we're already doing things in the collective that haven't been done before, but now we're really talking about taking it to the next level. And I think we needed to grow to get there for 2025. And now we're here at the start almost in a few weeks. And I'm very excited to see what that brings for new and old players, for the team as well. Basically, the content that we want to push out is something that Akalix already said, where Grim Battle will be huge. We of course have Turtle Wow 2.0 coming. And I do want to say, while we focused in the past on Turtle a lot on the PvE content, I want to say that PvP is not something that we've forgotten about. There are definitely things still in the works for PvP that are slated to come out very soon as well. I can't say more about that for now, but it's definitely been on our radar.
I could touch on one or two of them that I think would be fine to say. The one thing that's obviously coming very, very soon, like in the 1.17.2 patch cycle, is the PvP towers and open world sort of PvP encouragement. And then, which I believe is slated to be coming around the same time as Karazhan. And then we're also looking at, it might be a little after that, but we're also looking at in the 1.18 cycle somewhere having a new battleground and potential Sunnyglade rework, as well as it might not be in 1.18. We don't have a exact timeline on it, but we are talking internally about how we want to implement a ranked arena system, because that's something that a lot of more dedicated PvP players have expressed to us is they want a way to show off, hey, I'm good. Let me prove it. Let me beat someone. Let me
Tens
be
of
the higher
thousands
rank.
of PvPers just squealed in delight from what you just said. I hope you realize that, right?
Oh, I know. I was a ranking PvP player for many, many years. It's way more fun to play in a ranked competitive setting because then there's actually stakes, and that makes it fun.
Oh boy. Oh dear. Okay. Wow, that's a lot. That's a big bomb to drop here right at the end. That's a big one. Okay. Vrograg, I'll give you the last question here. In regards to where things have been this year and the future direction of Turtle, is there a question you would want to ask Jamie here?
I think looking back at, this will be coming out towards the end of the year. I'm looking back at 2024, how things have gone. I think overall it's been a success as a player who's been there every step of the way. Um, you know, most of my most nagging questions, I have the incredible ability to annoy enough people to ask the right people. Um, so I'm actually happy to say that all the burning questions I've had to ask have, in one way or another, been answered. I can't necessarily share all of those answers, of course, but um, I just want to take that time to be like, it's really nice to still see the Turtle team still taking time to engage with the community, because I think the biggest strength of Turtle WoW is the community and the team being willing to engage with the community. I think it matters a lot to players, and all I would ask is that you continue doing so into the future.
Okay, that's totally fair. That's totally fair. Jamie, any closing thoughts that you might have, not just on what we talked about, but we'll say 2024 in general for Turtle and where you guys are at right now?
I think most of the closing thoughts I just spoke about. Overall, I've been as excited as I've been for all of these years that I've worked on Turtle, because new things keep popping up. Oh, maybe we could do this. Maybe we can dream bigger and do this. And you never really know where you're going to end up. And we still don't know, of course. And that's kind of, it's a part of the enjoyment. Adding on to that, I think the greatest reward for me has been seeing players actually enjoy the new things that we've put out, which is amazing to see. And I'd love to keep doing that for the future in Turtle. And that's about it.
That's fair. I'm going to say something controversial real quick, but I've really been loving Paladin lately. That's not a popular thing to say, but
On Turtle WoW?
I know.
You can't say that.
Wow, that's crazy.
Half the staff are like, we're disowning Dan now. We need to get rid of him. Paladin was the alt I did for the Olympics, and it's been an actual joy. I'm almost 40 on that character now. Akalix. God, I got to get out of that. Akalix. Any closing thoughts from you?
When is Paladin getting buffed? That's my question.
Never mind. No more closing thoughts from Akalix. My God. Oh, Lord. Alrighty. This has been a long one, everyone. Not just a thank you to all of you who have listened. We're now an hour and 40 minutes deep in this without a break. But thank you to Vrograg, Akalix, and Jamie especially for joining us here today to talk about not just 117.2 and Karazhan, but the future of Turtle and where it's heading. Happy 2024, everyone. Happy end of year. This has been a look under the shell with myself, Dan, and our wonderful guests. Again, a thank you to everyone for joining us for this whole episode, and we will see you coming up here in early 2025. From all of us on the Turtle team, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we will see you then. Bye-bye now.